there were all sorts of sects of people who really liked it. The gay community loved it, the fashion community really loved it, the arts community really loved it, and it had a certain cachet of filth and degradation about it, which was, you know, overconsumption, appalling abuse of privilege and that sort of thing, and that was great fun. And so, and it was very, very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, it walked a very fine line between high camp and drama, and at the same time comedy, and it walked that line very, very well. And we had a terrific cast, and I remember that distinctly. One of the things that used to happen was that we'd be taken out somewhere, and they'd say, well, we'll turn up, and people didn't know how to treat us, you know, because we'd turn up and we'd sort of act like stars to a certain, I mean, we tried to. We had no idea that, you know, what you're obliged to do was to get drunk and smash things up and, you know, take too many drugs and fall down. None of us were into that. We got drunk occasionally and probably slept with their inappropriate people. Well, others did, I didn't, but it was one of those things. But my partner, Susan, was never invited, and it was frowned upon to have a partner in that public circumstance, because it meant you were unavailable, and that was very strange. And Susan hated it, of course, as you would. It was a lovely time to work, because the network really supported it. The writers and everyone worked really strongly, and the directors would come in and would work very strongly with us as well. We'd have read-throughs and rehearsals and so forth, and it was immensely valuable, and I really treasure those times. I've still got hundreds of tapes downstairs which are probably rotting away of that period, and it was immensely enjoyable. And of course I was, you know, 33 and pretty young, and thought I was pretty hot, really. Wanker. I think, reach burnout point, because I'm not one of these people who can just turn up and deliver lines off the cuff. I have to know them, unfortunately, and it meant that I had to sit down and work to learn them. Other people could learn them 30 seconds before they went on, and it didn't bother them. I would freak out if I can't remember a line. It would really bother me, and it would throw me, and I would be shaky for the rest of the day. And if you've got 13 cents to do on a Friday afternoon, then, you know, you've got a lot to get through. And so there was pressure from that point of view. I also thought at the time, and I still, to a certain degree, feel the same way, feel that the show was a little imbalanced, and that most of the men in the show were thugs, stupid, or both, and powerless. And I felt that was rather a bad look. I was less than thrilled to leave at a time when it was awkward for me to lose my job, and the only time in my life I've ever lost a job, as opposed to walk away freely. And that was very, very difficult to take on a personal level. I felt that I'd been betrayed, frankly. And it took me a while to figure that out. In the end, actually leaving the street was one of the best things I ever did. I started doing all sorts of other things and utilising skills I never knew I had, and that other people had strong belief in me, and that was terrific to come out of that environment and to have other people say, but you could do this and you could do that, and you go, could I? And then to actually to learn how to do those you know, documentaries and writing and that sort of thing was a remarkable gift from other people. I cherish them for it, you know. Johnny Gibbons phoned me and said, you're interested in boats, aren't you? And you're Captain Cook and that sort of thing. Well, you want to do an audition for me? And I said, for what, Johnny? And he said, well, listen, we're doing this thing called Captain's Log. And I said, you'd have to circumnavigate the country. Well, it's like I'd won lotto. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. You know, circumnavigate the country in, you know, 30 different boats telling the Captain Cook story. I mean, it was every kid's dream come true. I mean, I adore sailing. I adore boats. You know, the salt in my blood. And I just said, well, what do I have to do? And he said, well, we'll get you down to the Maritime Museum and you'll interview some people. And I thought, okay. So I wrote in my CV, the SEAV, and said, you know, I spent the first 9 months of my life in salt water. You know, and I wrote out this entire sort of slightly facetious CV, which made them laugh. And then I went and did some interviews and that sort of thing with people, and they decided they'd go with me, which was just such a kick in the pants and such a boost to my morale and to all sorts of fantastic things I wanted to do. And it really opened my life up to a whole different area and made me believe that there was a future. That whole captain's log journey was incredibly personal, was incredibly poignant and very moving, and gave me a massive amount of respect, a newfound respect for both the indigenous population and for the country itself and for the people who inhabit it now. And that you can't get making theatre or film or whatever to the same degree. It was real, it was connected to the land, it was connected to the sea, it was connected to me, and it was connected to the people I was with. And that was one of the most profound experiences of my life. It was like a very dry Fiji, was what it reminded me of, a very dry Lautoka that I remember. Everything sort of slightly shantyish and broken down, nothing working too well, the roads basically potholes, a pile of what used to be asphalt on the top, and then they drop off like cliffs on the side into millions of people up and down the sides of the roads, toing and froing with bicycles and motorcycles, mostly bicycles and on foot, things on their heads and so forth. Coffin cellars every 15 feet, morgues, you know, signs up, get your coffin here and that sort of thing. I'm going, what's all this about? We went past the city burial ground, or one of the city burial grounds, on the way into Kenya, and it was like Friday night at St. Luke's. There were rows upon rows upon rows of ambulances emptying corpses out and people being buried. And the churches, there were rows of little shanty churches full of people, and you just went, what the hell is this? You know? And of course it's AIDS, and that's the most massively confronting thing to come in contact with. And the Doherty story was a terrific story to do. I mean, David was treated extremely badly and by the circumstances. And I thought Cohen Holloway, who played him, who's up for a gong for it, by the way, in the Qantas Film and Television Awards this year for the Best Actor, I thought he was exceptional. His portrayal of David was incredibly moving, very, very sincere, and massively honest. And I'd only ever seen Cohen do comedy stuff before, like Eagle versus Shark and that sort of stuff, and he's a very funny man. But on the set, he'd be telling terrible jokes, blue jokes, purple jokes, and then he'd switch like that, and you'd get David, and it was such a transition. It was a massive transition. It wasn't just he wasn't just putting a face on. He'd switch into this character, and I think he captured his generosity and his fear and the underlying self-destruction that David went through as a result of being accused of this. And I think he portrayed it brilliantly, and it was wonderful to be around. And Jodie was terrific to be there with too, and we had a good time. And Donna and Paula with Lippy Pictures were massively supportive, in the same way that a lot of people no longer rehearse, especially on feature films. You turn up, you shoot on the day and that sort of thing. So working with them and the director Peter Berger, and to put that together was something really special. I mean, it was delicious, and they worked beautifully. As I've sort of reached a happier point in my acting career, I've also reached a point where I'm starting to direct a lot more, and that's really, really important to me. I'm really enjoying that. I've directed a number of plays recently, and there are other things coming up which I'm looking forward to doing as well. And that's really, I feel most at home. I feel that 30 years of my experience in both film and television and theatre have all contributed to help me tell a story in a clear way, and to help others do that in a way that I think is both helpful and useful. And I feel really, really happy doing that. I'm making that transition, I think, into director late, but extraordinarily happily, and that's where I'm at now.